Hello and welcome to Welcome Home Radio. The waters in the mortgage industry can be pretty muddy, whether it's investing, leasing, renting, home insurance, or myths and misconceptions. Welcome Home Radio has the answers for you, the consumer. And now, to help you make the right home buying decision for you and your family, here are your hosts.
Good afternoon and welcome to Welcome Home Radio. It is Wednesday, the 29th of September, and we're glad you guys are joining in. Today we're going to talk about all things buying a home. We're going to talk about the process from the very beginning, from intent to purchase, and all things in between. And so with us today, we have some really good guests. Of course, Tom is with us. Tom is always with us. And hello, Tom.
Hello.
And we also have Steve Kelly, who is a friend and somebody I helped buy a home, and Blair helped finance a home, as well as Matt Green is here with us. And he did the same thing Steve did, only he did it first. And he's a veteran. So we'll talk a little bit about the VA benefits of owning a home. Matt has experience with buying homes in different states. So he's got a lot to bring to the table today too. So just from the very beginning, when you buy a home, we start with, of course, you want to buy a home. There's a reason, be it investment, be in living in it. So let's just start at the very beginning. Matt, that day that you decided you weren't going to rent anymore, what made you tip the scale to want to buy? What was that moment like for you?
Well, a little scary at first, but it was a good decision to make, because being a renter, unfortunately, you're kind of at the mercy of the market, and you're at the mercy of your landlord, and rent generally never goes down. So that was my motivation for it.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll work on your volume a little bit. It's hard to hear you. So, Steve, I'll ask you the same thing. I know you've got experience with buying homes and I'm sure renting too. So what was that moment like when the light came on and said, I'm done renting, I want to buy? What was that like?
Renting actually was a long time ago. I've actually owned 3 or 4 homes now, but yeah, a long time ago, it was a decision as to stop throwing money away. Start putting money into a home that you actually own instead of giving it to someone else.
Yeah, I think that's true for all of us, Tom, as well. We all started somewhere, whatever year that was, and we made the decision to quit giving our landlord our money and let's try to build up some equity and, build a family. So the first part of that is, after you decide you're going to buy a home, is you got to have the money to buy a home. So we go into the lending part of it, or the cash money part of it. And, nowadays cash is really popular. I don't know the exact percentage, but I know it's quite a bit these days. But for most of us, we borrow money when we buy a home. Matt, being a veteran, I think you bring a lot to the table here. You served our country, and we appreciate it. And the Veterans Administration has some nice little benefits out there for a home buyer. So how would you describe your borrowing situations? Let's just go with the last time when, you and Blair and myself, we all worked together. How did that go, and what was that experience like?
It was a really smooth experience. I took off the headphones. Can you hear me a little better this way?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great. The experience was really good. I learned a lot in this last purchase, because this was the first time I bought something in Texas, but it went well because I had professionals working with me, and the best thing to do is to use professionals when you're doing this kind of stuff and stay out of the way and let them do their job. And then as far as the Veterans Administration went, it went pretty smoothly because, they have benefits for veterans depending upon your service rated disability in the state. You can, once you get up into the high, like in the 90 range, you get a certain amount off of your property taxes, and if you're 100% disabled, then your primary residence, you pay 0 taxes on that.
And that is a monster figure because
Yes.
we live in Texas and we don't have a state income tax. So property tax is pretty high here in Texas. So, and Tom, I know you teach people from all over the United States and the country that come to Dallas to learn how to be, a realtor or learn about real estate. Do you ever talk about, when you're teaching, do you ever talk about the lending process with the potential realtors in the crowd?
Well, we actually today they have a finance class that has been required since 2009. That wasn't part of their curriculum until after the financial collapse in 2008. So we found that there was a real need for realtors to have a better understanding of what was going on in the process. Not that they necessarily initiate the process or necessarily their, I kind of hear a little feedback. I'm sorry about that. But the reality is that realtors weren't all that inclined to understand what financing they were assisting with, or they were assisting their client, even though they have to complete that portion of the contract and actually stipulate, is it going to be an FHA, conventional, VA, or as Alan pointed out so astutely, is it going to be cash? Now, of course, we hate those people that have cash, but that's okay.
Yeah, we do. So that's a good thing you're talking about. I always preach on this show, stay in your lane. I'm a realtor. I'm not a lender. I that's not what I do, but I have to know enough about it to get somebody who might be buying a home for the first time or second time or even third time to discuss the options in lending. So I think that's great. Champions Real Estate is teaching that, and it's really good to hear that. Steve, when I know I've worked with you, and it seemed like it went pretty well. We've got a pretty nice home in a nice city. And how was your lending experience? I know you have to start there and get pre-approved. How did it go for you?
Yeah, I have to second what Matt said earlier too, that having the professionals like you guys to work with was fantastic. I don't think it would have happened without you, because I think my situation was a little bit different, being that I was moving back to Texas from California after being laid off due to COVID from my previous position. And so having, number one, a different job, but also different income and other stipulations to work around, you guys were able to make it happen. And yeah, I was very fortunate to find a home in the area in such a tight market. So yeah,
it's good. Yeah, that worked out pretty well. That was a good experience for me as well, and I thank you for that. So now we get pre-approved, and for any realtor out there listening, maybe invest one little trip to meet your new client, investment trip, and make sure that they will get pre-approved before you go showing homes. So we got the pre-approval out of the way, and now we got the home search going. There's a lot of ways to look for homes these days on your own. There's a lot of websites out there, and then there's the MLS that most realtors will hook you up to a portal, and you'll get the homes. So the process of identifying a home, did you have something in mind, what you wanted before you even started looking, or were you kind of open to what's out there? And I know the market was tight, a little tighter for you, Steve, than it was for Matt, but nonetheless, we had some work to do with Matt too. So can you talk about that with, anything that as far as looking for the home, were you open to something new, or did you kind of know what you wanted, had to have it, so to speak, or how'd that go for you? And any one of you guys, Matt, go ahead.
To answer your question, yes, I and my wife both had something, pretty pretty much in mind. We wanted to be in Grapevine. We wanted to be close to the lake, and we wanted a house that had, a pretty good amount of square footage, because we went from a nice tiny little 915 square box in San Diego, California. We wanted a house, and that was one of the reasons we moved here, is because if we wanted the same kind of house where we came from, we would have had to spend 1.5 million. And here we got
backyard and that view alone are worth 1.5 million.
Yeah, so thanks to you, we got everything we were looking for and more, and we got a really good deal. And then we did exactly what you said. We got pre-approved beforehand. We were ready to go, and when it was time to pull the trigger, everything just went like clockwork.
Yeah, and it's a lot of families out there. And Steve, we'll get to you with the same question in a minute, but a lot of families out there for the last, 6-8 months are a little frustrated. They've had to look at homes and make offers, and I'll tell you, it's after about the third or fourth offer, and if you don't get the home, you start getting a little frustrated, take a little time off, and it's emotional every time you go to buy a home. And if there's 8 offers, that means there's 7 disappointed families, and it adds up after a while. So it's been a little more difficult of late, but I'm happy to say I think it's easing up a little bit. I see homes on the market a little longer. I've actually shown homes that have been on the market 15 days. That was almost like a miracle, a while back. So we're making some progress, but we're still very, very busy. So Steve, same with you, man. I know what we ended up getting you, and it's a beautiful, beautiful home, and it's in a great location. Is that kind of what you pictured when you started looking? Did you end up thinking that way, or were you happily surprised you could get that, or was it more like, that's what I wanted anyway, and that's where I ended up, and it's perfect, or whatever? How'd it go with you?
It ended up being exactly what I wanted, which I was a bit surprised about due to the market. I thought that I was going to have to compromise in some way. And to answer your earlier question, I had actually been looking for months, online in particular, and then with your MLS searches, and really was starting to get frustrated, like you mentioned. But the pre-approval was very helpful, having that. And I think you probably remember we made an offer on a house that was rejected. And I thought it was a pretty aggressive offer, but I think they ended up with 6 or 7 on that house.
Yep.
So yeah, in the end, it worked out great. But I will say too that I had even looked at building a home, just from scratch, just a custom home, and was almost ready to pull the trigger on that. And I'm so fortunate that I didn't. Because I would have gotten stuck with a construction loan and high lumber prices and everything else, and also materials that we can't even get right now to close on that house. So
yeah, you bring up a good point there. I mean, I've got, I do several new homes every year with folks, and went under contract last Christmas with one home in the Fort Worth area, brand new construction. They haven't closed yet, and the new areas that they're building in the same builder, they've had 3 price increases. So this person hasn't even moved in yet. The same house is like $40,000 more than it was when, she bought it. So that's right. Going on. There is a lot of stuff going on with materials and labor, and everybody hears the news that the ships off the coast of California can't get in to drop off their supplies. And I don't know about all that. I'm not an expert, but I do know that builders, have had to slow things down a little bit because they can sell more homes than they can produce right now. So that's been an issue. And you avoided that, and you sleeping happily ever after, and that's wonderful. Hey, Tom, what are you seeing? I know you're an investor, and I know you're an experienced home buyer for your family too. How are you seeing the market right now? What's the mood in the school? I know brokers send a lot of their folks your way, and I know you talk to realtors, not just when you're teaching them, but I'm sure you have a few conversations in between or after. What are you hearing? What are you seeing on the level that you're at in the whole process?
Well, kind of, it's kind of strange because you would think at some point this market would take a breath and take a step back. I think part of the challenge with things slowing down a little bit, which would be actually probably a good thing in our marketplace.
Yeah.
I think for that to happen, we're going to have to see interest rates go up, and the Fed just really doesn't have much option except to start raising some interest rates, because they don't have any counter to the inflation at this point, and all this cost increase you just talked about. I mean, that's pretty dramatic. That's more dramatic than when I first got in the business back in 19.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. It's sometimes hard to remember those days, but I do remember days of inflation.
Yeah.
And that we haven't experienced this, in a 40-year period, 50-year period, roughly. And as a result of that, it really does become something that we need to take a look at. And, it would cool it down if we saw interest rates pop back up to a 4% or 4.5% level. And you say, well, Tom, that's just incredibly high. No, 17% is high. That's when I bought my first house.
Yeah.
So, we need some type of modification in this marketplace to kind of cool things off. I mean, I'm kind of speechless with regards to the fact that it has not changed. And there is no sensibility about it, except that there's just a high demand. And,
Yeah.
people
need to live somewhere. And that'll never change. I know rents have gone up, and rental demand is through the roof as well. I'm selling a home up north of here. Both of them were rentals, and the sellers wanted to not be a landlord anymore, and they're making a move. And investors are coming out of the woodwork to try to buy it. But fortunately for the sellers, they can get a conventional buyer who wants to move their family in and do a little bit better financially with that. So that's going on, but the demand is really high. Tom, I had one more quick question for you. I don't know if it's fair or not, but I don't know if there's such a thing as an average age of a realtor class. I don't know if it tends to be millennial or younger or older, or I know there's everybody in there, but what is the general mood of the students? I know they're getting into real estate. They're probably excited. They're probably not told. A lot of them are not going to be in real estate in 3 years. They're going to try hard. Some of them aren't going to do it, but others are going to be very successful. So
you need to stop spreading that rumor. You're going to put me out of a job.
I don't think so. I think you're going to do just fine. How's their attitude? Are they really fired up about the market, or do they say stuff like, I'm a little nervous, nothing goes straight up, and am I getting into real estate at the right time? What kind of advice does a teacher give a student in that situation?
Well, that's a real fair question. As far as, somebody's interest in the business, I always relate the story that, when I got in the business, rates were 15%. And so, people thought that was a crazy time for me to do that. And I was like, no, if people don't think that's a good time and they're leaving the business, it's even better for me because it gives me more business to have. But the reality I think we are seeing younger folks as far as, I think the makeup of the student that we are entertaining more so than it used to be. It used to be real estate was seen as kind of a second profession, after my career profession type situation. But I'll honestly state that there are lots of people that are in my classes that have just finished college in some cases, or just finished high school for that matter.
Yeah, a young man I sent your way. I got an email from his mom. He's 18. He just graduated high school, and a lot of people can't afford college for their kids.
Yeah,
And I think today college is really expensive as opposed to 35 years ago or something. So, I think real estate, if you get in young and you can hang in, you can do very, very well.
that's when
And
you went to college 35 years ago. Is that what I'm hearing?
let me think about that. I might need more than two hands. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's just a better way to go. Anyway, he's excited. I got an email from his mom.
Yeah.
He's enrolled. He's excited about getting started. And I don't know if he's going to do the accelerated class that you had talked about or the gradual one, but he's happy to be in it. And I'm pulling for him. And as soon as he gets out, I'm going to grab him and get him going.
Yeah, and again, I think it's just kind of a change in the times that, a lot of people aren't wanting to, young people have traditionally been more geared towards service industries, whether it's hotels or restaurants or whatever it might be. And I think that they're taking a second look at that with regards to interactions with people and kind of the overall what they see with regards to, well, how can I more maximize the monies that I should be making at this age and at this time? So I think there's a lot of introspection from that standpoint without the real understanding that it is a job. That's number one.
Well, that it is.
And secondly, it deals a lot with sales. And so you have to have the capacity to interact and to be a problem solver. I tell most everybody that comes in my classes, the first thing I make sure they're understanding is that if you don't like solving problems, you need to get out of this job. I mean, that's the core of what you'll be doing on a daily basis. Every day you're in this business. That there's, I mean, advice. It's not like putting, the widget onto the trestle every time the machine brings it by. Every time the machine brings it by, it's a different part, it's a different piece, and it's a different way to, to administer and build whatever you're trying to build with that real estate relationship.
Man, no kidding. It is constantly changing, moving, evolving. You got personalities from all over the United States to all over the world, especially here in the Dallas market. We got people coming from all over the world. The airport is an amazing thing, this city, and they're coming. So back to the home buying process. One of the things that's always fun about buying a home is the negotiation and the inspection. That's fun. Matt, how have your, not just with me, but in general, you're an investor. You and Tom have a lot in common. You've invested in properties. I think you still have one or two. I'm not sure, but I think so. What is the difference, just for any realtor out there or maybe a lender, anybody who's listening, what's the difference in the inspection process when you're buying a home for you to live in versus one for you to potentially, rent it out? And I know even with a cash purchase, you get a chance to do the inspection. At least I would think you do. So how does that go? Any changes with you with that at all, or what?
Well, I kind of look for the same things really in both, because I mean, when you buy a house, it's kind of, for me, it's a long-term kind of investment, and I want to make sure that, I'm getting, the most bang for the buck, so to speak. So I do look at a lot of different things. If I'm going to live in it, I might be slightly more picky, but not by much, because I mean, even if I'm buying a house for, investment purposes, I have to be careful because, there is some liability. You want to make sure that, you do your due diligence and that you buy a good quality product, because, when you rent that house out, you want to make sure it's a safe place to live, that it meets all the requirements, that, you're not going to be setting yourself up to be sued for, doing something negligent. And so that's kind of important. And it varies state by state. So you also have to be careful, when you're doing inspections, because not every state has exactly the same laws. So you have to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. And again, that's also where you guys come in, because you helped me along, because it was a little bit different here than it was in a different state.
Yeah, it's California and Texas are Mutt and Jeff, let me tell you. So, Steve, I noticed working with you, it was a lot of fun. You're kind of you want the basic stuff, but you need the strong things to be right, like the roof. That was a big thing. And then the foundation in Texas is a major, major issue. I don't think in California you guys had to deal with that too much, other than earthquakes, and I don't know how that works, but whatever. Yeah, I'm sure the ground shakes there too. So
No big deal.
but what was really nice working with you, and I'll segue into you giving a plug for your company. Steve was the kind of guy that's pretty good hands-on. He can do a lot of things when it comes to fixing a home up. And in fact, when we were looking, he goes, AP, don't worry about this. We're going to change this. I'm like, okay, So number one, just if you want to, go ahead and plug your company and tell people out there what you do, because it really relates to real estate. And we've had PK on the show just talking about his company. So go ahead and talk about your company, and then you can maybe segue into the basic things as a home buyer you're going to live in. What had to be right before you were going to go?
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to plug the business.
Yeah.
So I am the general manager for Orange Diamond Remodeling Solutions. We also own kitchen tune-up and bath tune-up franchises for the Flower Mound and surrounding areas, as well as the bath tune-up is actually for the entire Metroplex. We do remodeling on the interiors of homes, specializing in kitchens and baths. And it can be as little as changing out doors or painting, all the way up to a full-on custom where we're knocking out walls and doing a complete kitchen remodel or master bath, for example. But for me, it was a little bit different because I do have the ability to, with the company, go in and change things inside the home. So it wasn't as important for me as it is for some people with colors and decor, the tile that was on the floor or in the kitchen, because I knew I was going to change that anyway. And we do run across a lot of people that are buying homes, when they're moving in, and they do look at that. But I would say it's not as important as they might think, because it is relatively easy to change a lot of those decorative type items.
Yeah, it seems like the plugs always, if they don't have the plug isn't right by the kitchen sink or something, people go crazy about those little $10 deals, but that seems to pop up. The inspection reports for any new realtors out there, they're designed to scare the hell out of your clients. So just know that. They also run, they're state tested, and they have very strong codes they have to go by. So I actually witnessed my longest inspection report in my historical real estate career, 171 pages. Most of them are 26 to 32.
What?
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
How old was this house?
Not that old, 1995. But there's a whole other, and it was interesting. I'll say that. And the longest contract I ever did was with Matt. It took about an hour to DocuSign the darn thing. That was 1 million pages. So, and it was a different transaction, but we got through it just fine. So,
I will say this too, Alan, as far as the inspection report, I have learned over time not to just nitpick it, not to try to get the homeowner to fix every little thing. It's really just not worth it in the end.
Yeah, built in. I'm sorry, I cut out there. Okay, there's not a house out there built in 1985 that's going to stand up to 2021 standards. So there's some common sense involved here, and we get into the aluminum wiring in the old homes from the 50s and 60s, people are like, I can't move, I can't live there. Well, people have been living there for 60 years. I guess you probably can't, but it's just a different thing. And but I know a lot of inspectors, and they're all first class, man. The ones I work with and have been around for the most part, and they have a nice way about them to explain to your client if they need to what's important and what's not. In fact, I think most inspectors want the client, that is the buyer, to get there 30 minutes before he leaves so they can ask the tough questions. So that's a good process, and everybody get an inspection. Don't ever decline that. I'm in a deal right now where I'm representing the seller and the buyer declined it. Went right to pending. That's good for the seller. And that was my job. I'm like, we'll take that. But if I'm a buyer agent, not taking that. You're going to do an inspection. So, all right. So the other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is, how do you guys like Texas compared to California these days? What is it been? I know you're both smiling, so there's got to be.
I'll be the first one to chime up on that one. I always tease people because they ask, well, where are you from? And I said, well, I escaped from California because, I'm really liking it here. People have manners. For the most part, people have been very welcoming and warm. Some of them have been a little standoffish because I'm from California, but by and large, once they realize that I'm not, one of those lefties that are over here trying to change things and California, Texas. I've seen those bumper stickers. Don't California my Texas. That's not me. I am not like that. I came here for a specific reason, and that is because they treat veterans better here, better cost of living, more house for the money. Again, people have manners, and it just, it aligned with our personal values, and we're really happy to be here. And I think it was a really smart move on our part.
Well, while you touched on veteran benefits again, and I love talking about this because Texas really is a good state when it comes to, a veteran buying a home. And briefly touch on, I know you talked about the taxes, but there's a couple little things you guys get too, right? Like the license plate thing and the state parks. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, depending upon, there's a good website. There's several of them out there. You can look, if you're a veteran, you can look and see by state, which state offers, the best benefits. And Texas was in the top 4. And there's only 4 states in the entire United States that offer a 100% exemption for your homeowner's taxes if you have the correct rating. And Texas was one of them.
Other than Texas?
Yep. So Texas was one of them. That was a big decision. And yes, we do get disabled veteran plates if we're rated at 50% or more. That enables you to park for free at metered places and things like that. You can park at the airport for free for 90 days consecutive.
That's huge. That's a lot of money.
That's a big for at $24 a day. That adds up pretty quick. And then we get benefits and discounts at most stores. There's another website that has a list of veteran benefits that we get every single day in each store. Some of them give you 20% off, some give you 10% off. There's a lot of things that help because that all adds up in the long run. So they're really good to us here.
Steve, what has been your experience? I know you were back from California, so you got a little bit of a head start here, but how's it been for you? Are you glad to be back?
Yeah, I am. I spent about 15 years in Coppell the first time in Texas. And it's just a different climate, not just the weather, but for business, especially for business though, as well. And like Matt said, I think the people are a little bit more welcoming, and it is a different world politically, obviously. I'm happy to be back.
That's great. Tom, what do you think, bud? Any ideas? I know you're not from California.
Well, I thought you were going to ship me off to California. I was a little worried there just a second. So, having lived in Texas all my life, I do get a lot of folks coming from other places in the United States. And I think from a home ownership standpoint, the only adjustment is that we pay our taxes only through real estate ownership. So that's a mental adjustment that you have to make if you're coming from some other place in the United States, that they typically subsidize their tax base with a income tax or something that is based off of productivity. And so everybody pays taxes, but here it's just the homeowners. And so that does kind of play a little bit differently with how people, make the adjustment financially when they come here, because I know that Steve and Matt, their houses probably were much smaller, and as they mentioned, probably a little bit bigger, and as far as the price, but their taxes. My sister and my brother both lived out there in California, in Pasadena, and I would ask them what are they paying on their house, and it would be like, really? You only pay that? But that's kind of the magic formula of living here in Texas, is when you decide you're going to own real estate. So, and again, this environment is one of those that I think it's a great place to raise kids, and it's a lot of open space and lots of things you can go and do. And I think my wife is making me go look for shark teeth this weekend. So, yeah, up near Sherman.
Oh, Lord.
Okay,
Well,
there you go.
It's funny, I do business not a lot up there because it's a pretty good drive, but there's some pretty cool properties up there that built in 1920 and
Yeah,
gorgeous homes. And I've helped a couple of people buy those up there, and it's an interesting area. It's a good little drive, but what is that? The home of General Eisenhower?
yeah, I believe so. Right.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So at least I read the signs when I go there. So
Good for you. Good for you.
yeah, I hear you. Other than that, I tell you what we'll do. We'll just head on out, and thank you guys for joining us. Everybody will be back in 2 weeks. Not sure if Blair will be back yet, but he is temporarily away from the show for just 1 or 2 shows. Today would be the first, and I think in 2 weeks would be the second, but he might be here. I'm not sure. But anyway, we will be back. Steve, thank you. Matt, thank you again. And we look forward to having you both back on.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
And Steve, can I get your work number? Speaking of bathrooms.
Yes, you may. It's 817-676-5601.
Great.
Perfect. And that's what this is all about. So all you other realtors out there watching this show, listening, we're going to be on in 2 weeks. It's going to be realtor driven. We're going to maybe have some realtors on with us, and we'll talk about everything from the perfect transaction to some sticky situations. And that's how we learn. You learn by, you have to go to school, you have to learn the rules, but then you learn in the streets. And you, like Tom said earlier, there's a lot of stuff going on. Every transaction is different. We're going to talk about a lot of them in 2 weeks.
So you're going to talk about knife fights and that kind of thing?
Well, yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's
Okay.
what we do.
Okay, that's what I
Not a
wanted to
typical
hear.
show. We go right for the knife fight.
Looking forward to that one.
Thanks again, everybody. My name's Alan Pace.
And I'm Tom Holm with Champion School of Real Estate.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.